the concealed darkness lurking behind a rich and seemingly happy family. Many people often assert that great wealth has the power to corrupt even the most virtuous individuals. However, that's not entirely accurate. Money doesn't create flaws, it amplifies the ones that already exist. It offers individuals a false sense of freedom from consequences and a permission slip to act without limits. Yet while being broke is undeniably challenging, it's important to keep in mind that cash gems and digits in a bank account can't ensure happiness, especially when obtained through trickery or built on the misfortune of others. The case in 2020 involving Sarita and Leon Britz sent ripples of shock not just throughout South Africa, where the tragedy unfolded, but around the world as well. The investigation was anticipated to be tough, particularly since an innocent person was initially treated as the leading suspect. Only after an unforeseen and heartfelt confession emerged did the actual culprit come to light. Someone who bore the least malice toward the victim. To grasp the intricate storyline, we must rewind to the beginning, when money became the primary source of discord in a family long perceived as large and united. The Britz family, European immigrants, had made their home in the early 1970s in the quaint yet lovely town of Puff Adder, located in South Africa's northern Cape Province. Although small, the town acts as a vital economic and tourist hub in the Bushmanland region. In 1976, the Brits welcomed their first son, Toki, followed by their second son, Leon, in 1979. Within the community, the family was deemed genuinely affluent. The father owned what was likely the only substantial hotel in the region, which later developed into a complete hotel and restaurant complex. Both brothers excelled academically, engaged actively in sports, and thanks to their parents' efforts received top-notch educations. After finishing school, Toki moved away from their hometown, while Leon, who had been helping his parents and learning the hotel business since his teenage years, decided to stay behind, preparing to eventually take over the family enterprise. He was astute, detail-focused, and possessed a natural entrepreneurial talent that enabled him to run the operation seamlessly. The hotel complex owned by the Britz family frequently hosted a range of events, parties, and celebrations, and it was during one such event that Leon noticed an enchanting young woman. The instant he laid eyes on the slender brunette with green eyes and a captivating smile, she intrigued him completely. He approached her to introduce himself, only to find out that she was merely 14 and still in school. Even though she appeared much older, the news left Leon deeply unsettled, who was already 25 at the time. Nevertheless, he asked her to dance. And afterward, they spent nearly an hour chatting together on the terrace. The schoolgirl's name was Sarita. And from that moment on, Britz couldn't shake her from his thoughts, constantly daydreaming about their next encounter. Sarita Kaur was born on September 6, 1990, the youngest of 3 children in a family of Eastern European immigrants. They lived in poverty, and her parents' marriage had been falling apart for years, a situation that deteriorated further when their youngest daughter was just 9. The head of the family died tragically after being bitten by a poisonous snake, leaving the mother alone with 3 kids and fighting to survive. All the children were compelled to work just to make ends meet, making Sarah's childhood one marked by struggle and constant deprivation. Then, unexpectedly, a wealthy admirer stepped into her life, a man who seemed ready to offer her everything she had never possessed. Because she was so young, she had no idea how to react to the attention from a man 11 years her senior. Leon seemed to be genuinely smitten. He sought every chance to see her, picked her up from school, took her to popular restaurants, and showered her with lavish gifts and trendy clothes. He did everything possible to win her affection. Sarita began to receive gifts that were entirely new to her, and the sudden influx of luxury quickly overwhelmed the young student. She realized that with this man, she could secure a stable future and a family where neither she nor her future children would want for anything. Her mother, despite Sarita's young age, endorsed the relationship. Leon projected an image of reliability, respectability, and kindness, and no one questioned the sincerity of his feelings. On the other hand, Leon's parents were deeply concerned about the romance. A relationship like theirs, if it became serious, could easily enter illegal territory. However, Leon insisted he was willing to wait until she turned 18, after which he planned to marry her legally. Then came the unexpected news. About a year into their relationship, 15-year-old Sarita discovered she was pregnant. She hesitated to share the news with anyone, fully aware that it would upset both her mother and her boyfriend. She began wearing loose-fitting clothes to hide her changing body and became more distant and withdrawn. Eventually, she understood that she could no longer conceal the truth and chose to confess everything to Leon. He was shocked by her revelation. He recognized that the situation could not only tarnish his reputation, but also result in serious legal repercussions. Their intimacy had begun with him, and now he risked being accused of exploiting a minor, a scenario he could not afford to confront. His first step was to arrange a visit to a private clinic. There, the pregnancy was confirmed, and they discovered she was expecting twins. As the pregnancy approached a critical phase, Leon made arrangements for a doctor at the same private clinic to carry out an anonymous termination. Sarita was devastated, feeling completely broken inside. As the man who had promised to love and safeguard her pressured her into ending the lives of their unborn children, she felt utterly forsaken. Yet with his age and authority, Leon succeeded in convincing her that the procedure was necessary. He assured her that once they were married, they would definitely start a family. But at that moment, he argued a pregnancy would upend their lives and destroy any hope for a happy future together. Lacking the power to resist, the young girl relented and went along with his demands. She endured several days of physical agony afterward, but the emotional burden was far heavier. Overwhelmed by guilt and deep despair, Sarita isolated herself in her room, crying continuously, unsure of how to go on bearing the weight of what she had experienced. Her mother showed very little concern, believing her daughter was simply upset over an argument with her boyfriend and that everything would revert to normal once they reconciled. A few days later, Leon showed up at her home and took her to the city, hoping to cheer her up with strolls in the park and shopping trips. He thought this would help her feel better and uplift her spirits. Gradually, she managed to return to her routine, even though lingering resentment and distrust toward him remained. 3 years later, during her final year of high school, Sarita discovered she was pregnant once again. By then, she was only a couple of months away from turning 18. This unexpected and sensitive situation wasn't initially anticipated to lead to serious complications. When she shared the pregnancy news with Leon, he reacted harshly once more, demanding that she terminated, insisting they were too young to start a family. This time, Sarita stood her ground, declaring that she would keep the child even if it meant raising it alone. After giving it some thought, Leon proposed to her, formally presenting an elegant diamond ring. By that point, the initial tenderness in their relationship had diminished significantly, but with the baby on the way, he had little choice in the matter. By the time she graduated from high school, her pregnancy was unmistakably visible, and in the fall, shortly after she turned 18, the couple held a grand wedding. The newlyweds appeared outwardly joyful, although both silently wrestled with doubts about whether their decision had been entirely correct. A few months later, they welcomed their first son, followed by twin boys 2 years later. Living in luxury and fulfilling their every desire, they seemed to outsiders to be thriving. A joyful family. The business that Leon's parents had built and expanded over the years proved to be very lucrative. Eventually, Leon established his own chain of stores and fast food restaurants, which flourished alongside the family operation. However, by the midpoint of 20, the family started encountering difficulties and misfortunes. In the year 2014, Leon's father passed away unexpectedly due to long-term heart issues. The sudden loss took a harsh toll on his mother's health. She quickly began exhibiting noticeable and rapidly advancing signs of dementia, compelling her sons to admit her to a specialized facility. To guarantee she received the necessary care and attention, Toki returned to his hometown after many years away to assist his brother in running the family business. Together, they took the helm of the hotel. At the same time, Leon opted to involve his wife in the family operation. To fulfill a long-held dream of hers, they registered a store specializing in mining gear and tools under her name. She committed herself to her work while also tending to their 3 young sons. Britz, the eldest, began elementary school in their hometown of Poughkeepsie. As the twins grew older, the parents faced the urgent challenge of choosing an appropriate school for all their children. The struggle stemmed from the fact that securing a quality education in South Africa was far from easy. The couple discovered a good school in the nearby city of Kokomo, approximately 75 miles from Brit's home, but daily commuting was not ideal. They opted to rent a spacious residence in Kokomo, where Sarita moved with the children while Leon remained in Palafore to oversee the family business. This was something he couldn't manage remotely. However, Sarita had to step back from running the store despite enjoying it and achieving notable success. She poured herself into raising their sons, who only visited their father on weekends and holidays. Due to his demanding schedule, Leon seldom traveled to Kokomo. At first, everything seemed manageable, but over time, the couple drifted further apart. Their feelings for each other significantly diminished. In the year 2018, Sarita began experiencing health problems, which she initially brushed off. Nevertheless, medical tests revealed that she was battling cancer, as well as heart issues. She soon underwent surgery to remove the malignant growth. A treatment plan was prescribed. Fortunately, the prompt intervention saved the life of the mother of 3. From that point forward, she required regular preventive care at a clinic in Johannesburg, which proved to be quite expensive. The Britz family could manage it, and Leon never held back when it came to his children's mother's health. Additionally, Sarita hired a nanny and a housekeeper to help with household chores and care for the children, which was vital whenever she needed to travel for treatment. By that time, the couple had become so estranged that they were practically living separate lives. Sarita embarked on an affair in Johannesburg, opting to stay with her lover instead of at a hotel during her preventive treatment visits. Leon also appeared to have been involved in extramarital affairs, as compromising photos and messages were discovered on his phone. In reality, the only thing still linking them was their 3 children. Despite the family chaos, the business continued to thrive. The hotel, stores, and restaurant chain had generated significant profits, a portion of which Leon invested in real estate in major cities, resulting in a robust income from rentals. The family was not only the wealthiest in Potchefstroom, but also among the most affluent in the Northern Cape province. Naturally, the Brits drew the envy and hostility of many, whose numbers seemed to grow alongside the success of their enterprise. Leon, his parents, and his brother frequently faced threats and various demands. Leon often shared with his wife that he had long felt unsafe and worried that someone might attempt to take away everything he had built. In each of Leon's offices, as well as at his home and his parents' house, Sarita knew only a portion of these threats, mainly those that originated from their own residence. Initially, the threats were a major source of worry. However, as time passed and they became part of the daily routine, Leon started to dismiss them, thinking they were just feeble attempts at intimidation. Since none of the threats had ever been acted upon, a tragedy unexpectedly occurred, cutting Leon's life short. On the 7th of October 2020, Leon's wife called him, asking him to check on their dogs that a neighbor had reported had escaped. Leon assured her that he would call back after confirming everything was okay, but that call never came. Growing increasingly worried, Sarita attempted to reach him multiple times. Leaving their children in the care of the nanny, she drove to their house. The front door stood ajar, but the interior looked deserted. It was eerily silent, and no one responded to her calls. When she made her way to the backyard, she found her husband's body floating face down in the swimming pool. Injuries were apparent on his back, and the water had a pinkish hue from blood, unmistakably indicating that he was dead. In a panic, Sarita called both the police and emergency services, then reached out to Toki to inform him of the tragic event. Upon arrival, law enforcement quickly cordoned off the house as a crime scene. It was evident that the businessman had met with violence. His body bore numerous stab wounds and evidence of a struggle. A safe within the home had been accessed, and its valuables were missing. The initial hypothesis proposed that burglars had broken in and were surprised by the homeowner's unexpected return. Nevertheless, many other expensive items that were visible and accessible were left alone, suggesting that the intruders had specifically targeted the safe. The murder of the prosperous and affluent businessman dominated the headlines, drawing vigorous media scrutiny, lively social media discussions, and rampant rumors, gossip, and speculation. Many people knew of the long-standing threats against Britz and speculated that rivals or enemies had finally acted on them. Yet the primary suspect quickly became Toki, who had been handling the family business with his brother for several years. He had seen Leon shortly before the incident and was reported to be the last person to have seen him alive. Additionally, their mother was in very poor health, with doctors estimating she had just a few months left to live. It was said that her will was located at the younger son's residence. The prevailing theory suggested the elder brother disagreed with how the business was operated, primarily by Leon, and sought access to the will to make changes. This explained why other valuables in the house had been left alone. There were also indications that Toki may not have acted alone, and that murder was not part of the original agenda. Toki vehemently denied any involvement, insisting that he would never harm his own brother, especially since they had never argued over financial issues. He reached out for support from Sarita, who expressed her faith in his innocence and vowed to help him find the best lawyer to defend him. For nearly 2 months, the investigation dragged on without new evidence, leads, or witnesses. Then one day, 35-year-old Jacques Van Vuren entered the police station proposing a deal. He would plead guilty and reveal all his accomplices in exchange for a lesser sentence. It came to light that Jacques had once attended the same school as Sarita. They had been friends, and Jacques once had feelings for her. Although she had never reciprocated his feelings and soon started dating Leon, the two former friends had lost contact for many years until a chance meeting at a shopping center reignited their conversation. At that time, Jacques was facing a tough period. He had divorced his wife, lost his job, developed a drinking problem, and was finding it hard to make ends meet. Noticing that her old admirer still harbored feelings for her, Sarita began to confide in him about her unhappy marriage. She claimed her husband was abusive and mistreated her, but she felt trapped, fearing he would take their sons and leave her with nothing. This struck a chord with Van Vuren, whose ex-wife had likewise prevented him from seeing their children following their divorce. He genuinely felt for Sarita and wanted to assist her. They exchanged numbers, and a few days later, Sarita devised a clever plan, reached out to her former friend, and, with tears in her eyes, stated that her husband had been abusive toward her. She confessed that leaving him was not an option. She insisted that the only way out was to get rid of the tyrant. Sarita was highly convincing, and Jacques bought into her story. She also promised him a handsome sum of 500,000 South African rand. This offer appealed to Jacques, who was in dire need of money. He agreed to help Sarita, but he was not keen on carrying out the deed himself. So he made the decision to hire others to do the job. The plan was put into action in early 2020, but the global pandemic caused a delay. During this tough time, the British family business faced substantial losses, resulting in the closure of a store and part of their restaurant chain. Leon wanted to sell the hotel, which Sarita opposed. By late September, the conspirators reignited their original scheme. However, Jacques insisted on receiving half of the payment up front. Due to her financial struggles, Sarita could only manage to withdraw 100,000 rand. She also gave up her engagement ring. With this cash in hand, Jacques brought on board his friend, Enrique Williams. Williams, who battled drug addiction, was ready to commit murder for money. Unsure of his ability to overpower a strong adult man, alone he recruited his 25-year-old friend, Amand Labaki, to share the payment with him. Sarita facilitated the attackers' entry into the house and pointed out where the safe was located. She also permitted them to take anything they wanted to make the staged robbery credible. Her only condition was that the dogs be left unharmed, so she let them outside beforehand. Neighbors noticed this and called her, which served as her cue that Williams and Labaki were inside. She then dialed her husband, luring him right into the deadly trap. When the unsuspecting man stepped through the door, one of the hidden attackers struck him in the head with a baseball bat while the other lunged at him with a knife, leaving him with no chance to defend himself. Leon was stabbed 8 times and hit with the bat a dozen times before being dumped into the pool. After breaking into the safe, the intruders found no cash. They only discovered securities, diamonds, and gold bars. They handed the stolen items over to Jacques, who subsequently delivered everything to Sarita. The attackers decided not to seize anything else from the house, fearing that taking more would leave too much evidence behind. They were counting solely on the hefty payment they had been promised. However, feelings of guilt and fear of the repercussions weighed heavily on them. Jacques was never meant to appear at the crime scene. Sarita worried that he might be recognized on surveillance footage, particularly because Toki had seen him a few times and knew he was an old friend of his brother's wife. Jacques was only supposed to deliver the initial payment and convey Sarita's instructions to the hired men, but his nerves got the best of him. He drove past the British house several times to confirm the attackers were ready and that Leon had arrived as planned. His vehicle was caught on camera, and even though the license plate was unclear, investigators took notice of the car. This meant it was only a matter of time before they tracked down the owner. Moreover, there had been no cash in the safe, and all family accounts were frozen during the investigation. Sarita had no way to compensate the killers, as selling diamonds, gold bars, or securities would quickly expose her. She requested them to wait, but Williams and Labaki refused and began to threaten Jacques. Desperate and filled with guilt, Jacques had yet to receive the promised payment and feared that his accomplices might turn against him. He understood he faced a stark choice: either end up in prison or meet the same end as Leon. Jacques confided in his sister, who informed their mother. Together, the two women convinced him to turn himself into the police and reveal the identities of the other conspirators in exchange for a lighter sentence. In his full confession to the authorities, Jacques claimed that he had acted out of a sense of righteousness, viewing Leon as an abusive husband. He said Leon mistreated Sarita and threatened to take the children away. In truth, it was Sarita who had initially pointed the police toward Toki as the main suspect. Amid disagreements regarding a will and property between the siblings, authorities opted to detain and interrogate her to uncover her true intentions. It became evident that she and Leon had long since parted ways emotionally, each pursuing their own separate lives. Sarita was involved with a partner in Johannesburg whom she wanted to join permanently. When she voiced her wish for a divorce, Leon categorically refused and threatened to leave her destitute while taking their sons if she attempted to leave him. Although his exact motivations remain ambiguous, it's likely that Leon still held feelings for his wife and desired to mend their broken relationship. Sarita, on the other hand, planned to claim Leon's wealth and business after his passing, securing a comfortable future for herself and her lover. She also saw an opportunity to eliminate Toki by framing him, ultimately becoming the sole proprietor of the hotel, stores, and restaurants following her mother-in-law's demise. Her plot might have succeeded if the safe had contained cash and if she had managed to pay off the hitmen.